Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you. Mark is here, great to have you on. Frederick the Roth the Third, great to see you. Aki's Mad, hope you're well. Stefan, great to see you. We have also Alistair Kerr, great to see you on. Alistair, hope you're fine tonight. We have Chatty Rat, great to see you, Chatty Rat. Mark is here. We have CGM, hope you're well. Good to see you and thanks for moderating. Andrew, great to see you, Andrew. We have Ginger Girasse, great to see you. Hope you're fine tonight. Just going down through the list quickly. We have Steve. We have Killer. Thanks for moderating tonight as well. Killer. We have Reg. We have also Freckle Punny, great to see you. Reagan Elite, great to see you on the stream tonight. Guys, remember, Reagan Elite is almost at 1,000 subscribers, so do check out his channel. Do subscribe to Reagan Elite's channel. Get him up to 1,000. He's right. He's just a few short of that, so I do recommend his channel. Great stuff there, and do subscribe. Help him out there. We have also John, great to see you, John. Niall. We also have Wim from the Netherlands. Jasper Edwards. What's a by-election? A by-election is when a member of parliament resigns their seat or dies, for example, so they're no longer able to remain an MP, or if they've been kicked out because the party kicked them out, and then there's a recall. The members of the constituency recall the MP and say, look, we want to get rid of you. Then what happens is it's like a mini election, and this is what happened in Rochdale recently, a few days ago, where the previous MP, I believe he died, and so it was a Labour MP. He died, but what happened was the Labour Party put forward a new candidate to run in his stead, but this candidate had made some comments about Israel, I believe, and the Labour Party removed the whip from him, so he couldn't run as a Labour candidate. Well, actually, he did run as a Labour candidate, but if he won, he would have sat in Parliament as an independent. But it didn't work out like that, and we'll get into a little bit later what happened. Shell, good to see you. Super Tiny 808, great to have you on. 91 Leeds is here. Mark Leslie, great to see you. Elvis Black, great to have you on tonight. Steve Martin, great to see you. Bill is here. Amax C, and so many more. Hope you're all very well. Sorry I can't say hello to everyone, but because we're up to 143 viewers, remember guys to smash the like button. If you want, I can read out your comment if you send me a super chat, and remember, you can also become a patron or become a member of the channel. Anyway, let's get into the business of tonight. So a few things to talk about, of course. George Galloway and that by-election. The Tories in general. It seems the Tories are stealing a Labour policy of getting rid of the non-dom tax status. Michael Gove is in a bit of trouble, and just want to touch on something happening in the US. So, first of all, the Rochdale by-election. So the result was a bit of a shock for both the Labour Party and the Conservatives. Conservatives are not doing very well at the moment in general, so their share of the vote collapsed. I think it's 19 points. Labour didn't, their share of the vote collapsed as well because they were not campaigning, and they had withdrawn the whip in a sense, not the whip, but they had withdrawn their support for the candidate. So they told people not to vote for the candidate, basically. So it had dropped something like 20%. So it left the way open for George Galloway. And now Reform UK were hoping to win the seat, but didn't really work out like that. Now, George Galloway has, of course, delivered his victory speech. He's been speaking to the media, and he's getting prepared for Monday. So on Monday, he will go into the House of Commons. He hasn't been there since 1997, I think, or maybe 2000. It's been many years since he's been in the House of Commons. So Maybe it's 1997, the last time he was elected as a Labour MP. But it's been a while since he's been in the House of Commons. And I imagine he's planning to cause a bit of trouble. Now, he's already caused some trouble for the Prime Minister, it seems. Remember when Galloway pretended to be a cat? Yes. So he was on, Big Brother. So anyone who is not familiar with Big Brother, it was a terrible idea, where people would be recorded in a home, in a house, for a few months at a time, and then people would be voted out in some strange way. Anyway, so there was the Big Brother. He was in Big Brother for a while, I believe, and then he was voted out, or I don't know. Did he win it? I don't remember. I thought the idea was interesting for the first 10 minutes, and then it was like, okay, why are we watching people sleep? For example. So there were different incarnations of Big Brother as well, big celebrity Big Brother and all sorts of things. So anyway, Galloway pretended to be a cat in one episode of Big Brother. Freckle Pony, thanks so much. That's George Galloway, the alleged leftist who has just happened to share the stage with far-right bigot Farage and embrace the white supremacist Bannon. Yes. People will say that George Galloway is a leftist, but why would he throw his support behind people like Nigel Farage and met and hugged, I believe, Steve Bannon, the guy who was sharing the stage with Liz Truss there a couple of weeks ago, and who had called Tommy 10 Names, Tommy Robinson, a hero, which of course Liz Truss did not reply to. This is the guy, and of course there are, when it came to Brexit, he was a campaigner for Brexit. He still supports Brexit. He's anti-SNP. He doesn't want Scotland to leave the Union. So he's an interesting character, to put it mildly. And he has shared a platform with some very strange people. Some people describe him as a grifter. Some people describe him as a carpetbagger. He came down to Rochdale. He's not from there. He's from Scotland. What is he doing there? Well, it's just to win the seat. Now, he has run in previous by-elections and he hasn't been successful. But this time, the planets were aligned in his favour, and of course, he managed to get across the line. Now, I don't see him holding on to the seat. There's talk of a May election, and if there's a May election, the Labour Party will likely win the seat back, and then George Galloway will go back into the wilderness. But he is trying to make as much hay as possible, trying to make as much of a name as possible for himself, and there's no doubt that when the general election does come around, if he doesn't fight the seat, he'll probably resign early and then look for a seat somewhere else, perhaps somewhere that he believes he can win, maybe an ex-Tory seat or something like that. Anyway, so following this, of course, Rishi Sunak delivered his speech at number 10. I'm not going to show you the speech. It goes on for like 11 minutes or something. But there is a bit of a highlight of the speech, and it seems that Rishi Sunak highlighted the fact that George Galloway won that seat, and there was a problem with him winning the seat.
Is now Rishi Sunak saying that he dismisses the horror of what happened on October the 7th and glorifies Hezbollah. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, listening to the Prime Minister and also listening to George Galloway's reaction. Beth, George Galloway dismissing roundly everything that the Prime Minister had to say.
Yeah, and I think that is a demonstration of the megaphone kind of politics that George Galloway is going to bring to the Commons there. Sam asking him questions about reacting to the Prime Minister's speech. And in a way, George Galloway was playing the man, not the ball, wasn't he? He was saying that he was a Prime Minister at the fag end, I think it was how he put it, of his premiership, and really said, I won this election, I don't have much time for what the Prime Minister says at all. But a lot of other people will have been listening to what the Prime Minister said, in the sense that I think he was trying to respond and capture a moment in what has been a very febrile few.
Exactly. Megaphone politics, like Boris Johnson. Well said, Andrew. Yes. He's no different to Boris Johnson. He's no different to Michael Fabricant, for example, or Desmond Swayne. Or, I don't know, is there anyone on the left that we could compare him to? Jeremy Corbyn is not like that, but he's like Boris Johnson. It's a very good comparison.
Weeks. I mean, it began back in October, on October the 7th, when Hamas attacked Israeli citizens. That sparked this long drawn-out war, the Israel-Hamas war. And the fallout of that has been growing tensions within our communities and on our streets. And that was a Prime Minister there giving, as a couple of former Cabinet Ministers have now said to me, a speech they think he should have given months ago about talking about the threat to our democracy. He said that...
The threat to democracy from Rishi Sunak, the guy who was not elected Prime Minister. As an Irishman, Max, how does the sectarian nature of the Rochdale by-election appear to you? Look, I'm not familiar with Rochdale that much. I know that there's a large Muslim community there, and that's what helped get George Galloway elected. I don't know what social community cohesion is like in the area, and it's important that the community is respected, but also other communities are respected as well. So the problem is not so much George Galloway. The problem is the Tories. The Tories have been engaging in this culture war, hoping to drive a wedge between different communities, trying to whip up anger towards the Muslim community. And of course the right-wing media go along with this, the likes of GB News, Talk TV, the Daily Mail, the Sun, and others. They're happy to exploit this and try and convince the public that Muslims are the enemy. But they've been doing this since the 1990s. Single mothers were the problem. The European Union was the problem. Immigrants were the problem. And now they've moved on to the next scapegoat.
Extremist forces are trying to tear us apart. He talked about the shocking increase in extremist disruption and criminality, our democracy itself being a target. And he...
See, are there problems? There are problems in every community. So what you need to do is you need to sit down with the community leaders and ask them, what can we do to help create a situation where you are empowered to deal? Because in many cases it's, for example, young people feel disenfranchised. They're not able to get jobs. They're not able to. They don't feel that the government or the country maybe accept them. They don't feel that they have any value, or that they don't feel respected. So it's not just when we talk about these issues, it tends to be, well, we need to focus on the Muslim community, or we need to focus on immigrants, or we need to focus on, instead of actually asking politicians, what have you done to try and bring the communities together? What have you done to bridge that divide? Because there is a divide between what the government is saying and what people in the communities feel. What are you doing to resolve that? And instead of saying, I'm trying to combat the extremism. The extremism is given a voice when ordinary people don't feel listened to. So you need to resolve that problem first. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. The threat to our democracy comes from those who pass draconian laws. Exactly. Rishi Sunak talking about threats to democracy when his party are trying to ban the right to protest. Remember, recently they tried to introduce a law just to ban Steve Bray. And they succeeded in forcing Steve Bray out of the area where he normally protests to the fringes in order to quieten him. A law for one individual. And of course there are other laws when it comes to protest, but it's not just in protest. It's about removing worker protections, stopping workers from going on strike, stopping workers from striking in sympathy of other workers. There's a whole range of problems that the Tories have been pushing, a whole range of ways that they're taking away people's rights. And, people will push back.
He spoke about British people coming together to combat these extremist forces, and beat this poison out of our society, as he put it. He talked about dusting down his framework for tackling extremism.
Instead, like tackling extremism, what are you doing in order to empower the communities so that they can get rid of the extremism? They can resolve this problem. What are you doing? You're doing nothing. Rishi, when was the last time Rishi Sunak actually met with any of the community leaders? Like, he's talking the talk, but he's not walking the walk.
Is the Prevent programme. And just, I've been getting, because this has been going out live, some reactions from various people. One senior politician said that they wondered whether there'd been actual intelligence on specific protests or hostile threats that has prompted this intervention. As I understand it, Number 10 won't get into specifics, but clearly, given the febrile atmosphere, there are concerns around MPs' safety too, as we've been well documenting on.
See, when it came to the vote was it 2 weeks ago now? Or was it last? It was 2 weeks ago. What ended up happening was that the vote was, in a sense, suspended because allegedly MPs felt that they were being threatened. But that's not the way to resolve these problems or to respond to these problems. Well, let's not have a vote because some MPs may feel threatened. But shouldn't it be the opposite? You should be saying, and I said this at the time, what Keir Starmer should have allowed was a free vote so that MPs could be free to vote whatever way according to their conscience. But it seems that the Speaker suspended the motion, in a sense, in order to protect MPs. But that's not democracy. Democracy has already died, if that's what you're doing. Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. Sunak complained about extremists is like a man who voted for the leopards eating people's faces party, complaining that his face is being eaten. Yes. You know, Sunak can't wash his hands of this. He has empowered people like Lee Anderson. Lee Anderson was made deputy chair of the Conservative Party. Why was he made deputy chair? We knew what Lee Anderson was all about before. Why is it that Suella Braverman hasn't had the whip removed? Suella Braverman's comments are probably even worse than Lee Anderson's because Lee Anderson limited it to London and Sadiq Khan. She painted the entire country with one brush. Why isn't she sacked? Because she's important. Because she has influence in the Conservative Party. Because she could be a future leader. You know, the Conservatives don't want to get rid of her because who else do they have? Liz Truss? Kemi Badenoch?
On Sky News, another former cabinet minister has messaged me saying it was a good speech but with no action. Surely if you go out at 6 p.m. on a Friday like an emergency speech, which is what it felt like. This is so extraordinary and unusual for a Prime Minister to take a podium outside Number 10. That is normally general election or resignation territory. So that
I know he was disappointing us. we all thought, oh, there's going to be a special meeting outside Number 10, a presentation outside Number 10, a speech outside Number 10. He's going to resign. He's going to call a general election. No. It's like, be kind to each other. I'm going to deal with extremism, not within my party, not within the Conservative movement. No. People on the street, we're going to deal with that. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Heard it was lowest turnout since 1918 for the vote in that area. At the time, some women over 30 could vote. Over 18, I think, could vote too. Yeah, so back in 1918, the voting public were slightly different. But it seems to be the case, that the turnout was extremely low. And of course, Labour had convinced a significant number of its voters just to stay away or spoil their ballot in some cases. You can support the Palestinians without being anti-Semitic. Galloway doesn't seem to know this. Look, Galloway is not somebody to be trusted. You know, he has a long history of dishonesty. And it's look, he's likely to lose his seat at the next general election because he won it through a fluke. It was a perfect storm of the Conservatives and Labour. Like if what happened with Labour had what the situation with Labour, if that candidate hadn't made those comments, he would have won the seat. So at the next election, Labour will likely win the seat. Now, it's also possible, I doubt it though, that Galloway will make a big name for himself and maybe he will hold on to the seat. It's not likely, but because it was more of a protest vote. But if he does, he's not going to have any influence. He'll be just ranting and raving in the House of Commons. He doesn't have a significant party behind him that he's going to be able to extend his win to others and allow them to win seats. That's not going to happen. If he's extremely lucky, he will remain one MP. If he's not, he will of course lose his seat. Galloway sent out 2 different letters to voters. It depended on what street they lived on, according to a post I saw on Twitter. I saw. My God. Maybe Reform UK and Richard Tice are telling the truth after all. Galloway is a slimy individual. Once again, he's somebody who cozied up to Nigel Farage and Steve Bannon. He had a job with he was interviewed regularly by RT, Russia Today, and he also Press TV, which is owned by the Iranian government. He had his own show on that. I don't know if it was eventually shut down, but Max, a lot of people voted for Galloway because he is the only one speaking up for Gaza. Yes, it's I fully understand that. And it has upset some people in the constituency because they were hoping that he would actually talk about Rochdale, but he did win the seat definitely because of what's happening in Gaza. So it's a number of things working in his favour. The Conservatives really unpopular, Labour pulling their candidate at the last minute, and what's happening in Gaza at the moment. If there wasn't this situation in Gaza, Galloway would not have won the seat, unless he was running on a different ticket, if he was running on cost of living or something like that, but that's not really his style.
That is a big call for a Prime Minister and this former Cabinet Minister saying to me, if you're going to do an emergency speech like that, do you surely need to outline some action?
Anyway, let's move on to this clip here where George Galloway was interviewed by Sky News and it went downhill pretty quickly.
I'm standing here at George Galloway's campaign headquarters. George Galloway, did you just watch the Prime Minister's speech?
I didn't watch it, but I understood.
Why are they doing an interview at a Subaru car dealership? Is this his part-time job or something? He sells cars?
The first part of it related to the Rochdale by-election.
The Prime Minister has just said that the election of you to Parliament is beyond horrifying. What do you say to that?
Well, I can understand how disappointed he is about the by-election. The Conservative Party, which is the government of the country, was crushed, not just by me, but by an independent candidate that no one had ever heard of before outside of Rochdale. So it was a disastrous night for the Conservatives and a disastrous night for Labour. I got more votes than Labour and the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. And
Ukulele Love says no hat wearing for Galloway in the House of Commons chamber. So yeah, his trademark hat will not be allowed.
The Reform Party put together, which adds up to a pretty crushing rejection of the two-party system. So I understand why he's alarmed.
I want you to address some of the specifics that the Prime Minister said about you this evening. He said that you backed Hezbollah. Is that true?
I don't know what that means, backed Hezbollah. I oppose Israel's occupation of Lebanon, and I respect the right of people in occupied territory to resist their occupier. And I've done so since Hezbollah was formed. And
although not when it comes to the people of Syria. Wasn't he a supporter of Assad? So when people in Syria were resisting Assad, he was on Assad's side.
Israel occupied much of Lebanon, right up to the Litani River, regularly bombing Beirut and so on. So I'm not sure what business that is of his, because you see,
Hezbollah are a terrorist organisation.
Actually, they're part of the government of Lebanon, a country with which we have sovereign diplomatic relations. I had this debate with Sky's Anna Botting in 2006. It's quite an epic clip. You should watch it. More than 100 million people have.
Actually, was brought up when it comes to Ukraine. Yeah, I don't know his position on Ukraine, but I can imagine his position on Ukraine.
They said all these things about me in the by-election. And in the by-election, it was them that got crushed in the democratic process. So I'm not sure why he would reheat it now.
The Prime Minister is saying
talk
that
as if this is God. We're talking about little Rishi Sunak in the fag end of his prime ministership. Don't talk to me as if he's come down from the mount with tablets of stone. The things that he says are somehow meant to awe me. They may awe you, they don't awe me.
A lot of people have just watched what the Prime Minister said. This is your opportunity to respond to what he said.
Well,
he says that there are forces here at home trying to tear us apart. He is implying you are a divisive figure. You have run an election campaign that has tried to...
See, a problem is that when Rishi Sunak says something, it doesn't carry a lot of weight because of Rishi Sunak. So he could say things about George Galloway which are true, but our natural reaction is to say, what the hell is Rishi Sunak saying about this guy? Even Jeremy Corbyn doesn't want to engage with George Galloway because of how volatile he is as a person. Thanks so much, Natalie. He's quite toxic, but he's extremely popular with a certain section of society, and he will remain popular. He will not do any wrong. But I find it interesting that I'm glad he's not an MP in my constituency. He's Prime Minister. Not just reading the comments. He likes to be free apart from Scotland. Yes, he's not a big fan of Scottish independence. So people should be allowed. He believes that Palestine should be free, but not Scotland.
to appeal, particularly,
and
not entirely, to one section of the community.
Who won the election? Me or Rishi Sunak? I've got the democratic mandate here, not Rishi Sunak. He didn't even come second. He was lucky to come third. So don't put to me statements made by Rishi Sunak as if I'm supposed to be impressed by them. He don't impress me much.
We at Sky have spent some time today on the streets of Rochdale, and there are people who say that they feel intimidated by people like you and the people that have supported you.
I have just
and they have pointed out that you have concentrated your campaign on foreign affairs, and they worry that Rochdale will not be the winner.
That's my answer to you. I was just elected with a thumping majority by the electorate in Rochdale. That's all that matters to me.
So why are there people on the streets of Rochdale today worried?
Well, people voted yesterday, and they voted for me. Why is that difficult for you to...
A huge problem here is that because of what Rishi Sunak said, he's actually empowered George Galloway even more. So if Rishi Sunak had said nothing, we wouldn't be watching this now. We wouldn't be seeing this reaction. You can see this video here has almost 500,000 views in just a few hours. So a lot of people are watching this 7-minute long video. Most people don't watch these types of videos. But George Galloway is getting a huge amount of free publicity because Rishi Sunak called him a threat to society, a threat to democracy. He was elected, whether we like it or not. Now, if there's going to be an investigation into this, good. If something is if there was some intimidation or whatever, that needs to be investigated. But at the moment, he was elected. He was democratically elected. We have to respect that. we mightn't respect his politics, mightn't agree with the politics, but he was elected, so that has to be respected. And Rishi Sunak shouldn't be saying these types of things, because there are worse people, perhaps, than George Galloway in the House of Commons at the moment. Lee Anderson, for example. Like, the language that comes out of Lee Anderson's mouth is considerably worse than George Galloway's. But Lee Anderson has his own TV show on GB News.
Grasp.
Why are there people on the streets worried?
There may be people who didn't vote for me who are worried, but the majority, the thumping majority, voted for me. I've got the mandate, and I'm going to the House of Commons with it.
And it's a mandate, you think, to do what? Because there are people that listen to what you say about whether or not Israel has a right to exist, what you say about what many Jewish people think are threatening slogans.
We had this conversation last night. Why are you reheating it?
Because in the light of the Prime Minister's
Don't keep
statement.
telling me about the Prime Minister as if he was Moses.
Do you not respect the Prime Minister?
Do I respect the Prime Minister? I despise the Prime Minister. And guess what? Guess what? Millions and millions and millions of people in this country despise the Prime Minister. I don't respect the Prime Minister at all.
What are you planning to do next week when you arrive in Parliament?
Well, I'm meeting the Speaker on Monday morning, and then I'll be introduced and sworn in. I'll be escorted by the Right Honourable David Davis MP, former Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party. I don't know why he would do that if he thought I was the kind of man you're clearly implying that I am.
David Davis, okay. We know who David Davis is. Brad, thanks so much for that super chat. He doesn't impress me much. George Galloway loves Shania Twain. Yes, it doesn't impress me much.
David Davis is one of the great parliamentarians of today and this age.
Sorry, what? David Davis is one of the great parliamentarians of today.
And I'll be taking my seat in the House of Commons and speaking for the people of Rochdale. That's what I was elected to do.
And what is your message also to Keir Starmer?
My message to Keir Starmer is that the skids are under you in scores of Labour seats up and down the country, because you've lost the trust, you've lost the confidence of millions of your traditional loyal voters.
Now, we have now had an election where two of the candidates have alleged intimidation. The Prime Minister referenced that intimidation in his address on the steps of...
to the Prime Minister as if that's supposed to impress me. The Prime Minister is the Prime Minister is a rather diminished and degraded politician. He made a party political statement. I don't care about Rishi Sunak's attitude. What I care about is that the returning officer, a man of unimpeachable integrity, I'm sure you'll agree, declared
until he's not
a free and fair election, and me as the winner, and Rishi Sunak as one of the crushed two big parties in the state.
So why are two candidates?
Keep repeating the same questions to me, because I have other people to talk to. So let's make this the last one, shall we?
We got a party to deal with.
Allegations of intimidation, allegations that your supporters intimidated other candidates.
What times you've said that? The returning officer declared it last night. You were there as a free and fair election, and me as the winner.
And the Electoral Commission today have said that they're going to look and talk to the parties.
Have to just suck it up. I won the election.
George Galloway, thank you very much indeed.
Somebody had said online that the SNP should use the same phrase. Just suck it up. I won the election. Labour will be in for a shock. They think the general election is fully in the bag. Look, not my words, but Sir John Curtis, the polling expert, said that he believes that the Labour are probably cushioned from any any rebellion within the party from the Muslim vote, because they sit on pretty massive majorities where there is significant Muslim communities. So even if the Muslim community does reject Labour, do rebel against them at the ballot box, the impact will be limited. Now this may change over time, but at the moment Labour are still pretty safe, because a lot of Muslims will still come out and vote for Labour, but those who do not, or decide to vote for other parties or just stay at home, the impact will be limited. Now, they're not my words. They are Sir John Curtis, the polling expert. So I would refer to him. Anyway, guys, let me see if there's anything else happen. I despise the Prime Minister, says George Galloway there. There was another comment I wanted to read here. Where is it? PM rails against extremist forces trying to tear us apart. So that was in his speech in front of Downing Street, in front of number 10. Rishi Sunak has railed against extremist forces trying to tear us apart during a Downing Street address to the nation. The Prime Minister, this once again, this was, I think, a massive mistake. So this was in response, of course. He pretended that it was in response to the current protests. It was in response to what's happened in the House of Commons, but in reality, it was in response to the Rochdale by-election. Prime Minister said that there has been a shocking increase in extremist disruption and criminality, and added that now our democracy itself is a target. He also described the Rochdale by-election result on Thursday as beyond alarming, and claimed our streets have been hijacked by small groups who are hostile to our values. Well, once again, this is putting booster rockets under George Galloway. A sort of Barbra Streisand effect. A sort of reverse Barbra Streisand effect, I think. His surprise speech came after the victory of the maverick politician George Galloway in the Greater Manchester seat, following a campaign dominated by the highly emotive issue of Gaza and dogged by accusations of abuse and intimidation. In response, Mr. Galloway told Sky News he despised the Prime Minister and did not care what he thought, as he had won a free and fair election. Community tensions in the UK have heightened against the backdrop of the Israel-Hamas conflict triggered by the militant attack on the 7th of October. In the face of ongoing pro-Palestinian protests, MP have spoken of their experiences of receiving death threats and their concern for their safety of their families, prompting the government to announce an extra £31 million to protect elected representatives. Is this necessary? I don't know. I'm not saying that MPs should not be protected. Of course they should be. But is it necessary for this extra? Because if there have been protests outside MPs' houses, now I don't agree with that. I think if you're going to protest, it makes more sense to protest outside the surgery, the MP's surgery. To protest outside the party headquarters, maybe. Or maybe if it's an issue with the Home Office, you protest outside the Home Office. I think this is probably... It's actually... I think it actually garners more support from the public as well. But protesting outside, also an ex-minister's house, is just seen as intimidating. And it doesn't actually help your cause. It doesn't help convince people that you're on the right side. I think it was it Tugendhat? Not Tugendhat. It was another Tory MP who's an ex-minister. Damn, I forget his name. But there were protests outside his house, and I think it would have been better protesting outside the Conservative Party headquarters, for example. Max Sunak said that after saying at the Tory conference in Scotland today that the SNP are trying to divide Scotland from England, and the SNP dislike England. You know, the SNP dislike Westminster. The SNP don't have a problem with English people. The SNP have a problem with Westminster, and they keep saying that. Look, I'm not a spokesperson for the SNP, okay, but they keep saying we have a problem with Westminster. Our problem is with Westminster. And of course, the Tories turned that into the SNP have a problem with England. They hate the English. No, they don't. They have respect for English people. They don't have respect, or they have little respect, I should say, for the Tories, because the Tories have no respect for Scotland. No, I'm not talking about the SNP. I'm talking about Scotland. They have no respect for Scotland. Thanks for the likes, guys, on the channel. So let's just take a little break from all of this madness for a moment and enjoy this funny clip for a moment, and we'll be back in just a jiffy. Hope you enjoy it.
Colin from Portsmouth is on the line. Hello, Colin.
Well done, Tom Cleverley.
Tom Cleverley, James Cleverley. Tom Cleverley played for Watford, Colin.
Oh, names are fluid, Anthony.
Right,
Grant
yeah.
Shapps had 7 of them.
True.
Well done, James Cleverley, for sacking people for saying how bad things are. And well done for banning overseas care workers from bringing their families with them while they work here. Cleverley by name, James by nature.
It seems like another way of saying, we want people here to help us, but we don't want them to be human, Colin.
Oh, don't be soft. They're
Right.
here to care for our elderly and sick, not their own. The last thing you want is for your carer to say, oh, sorry, I can only look after you until 5. I've got to make my 8-year-old's dinner. Let someone else make their dinner 1,000 miles away. That's how it should be. And if you have a family after coming here, we should deport them too. That shows a lack of focus.
You're disincentivising them from coming, Colin. That's the
Well,
problem.
they can't have been that keen to come if they thought to have families before this rule was invented. And how about this idea? If you're a carer, then
Right.
train up your 10-year-old to care as well. Free labour for the NHS is win-win. Have that one for free, Cleverly. Anyway, mate, thanks for having me on. Love to the family.
Love to the family, Colin. Love to the family.
You know, sometimes as a nation, I think we're too kind.
Yeah.
You should have thought, before having a family, you should have thought about that rule change that was going to be put in place by James Cleverly last week. Okay. Oh, Colin. So I just want to show you this interesting map. The Conservative Party have hit a new low under Rishi Sunak of 24%, less than 1% above the post-mini budget nadir. It says here, so the Tories at 24%, down 20 from 2019. Labour up 11 since 2019. Reform UK 10%, up 8.3. That's probably in relation to the Brexit Party. Liberal Democrats 9, down 2. Green Party 6, up 3, and the SNP 3, more or less down 1 percentage point. But yeah, it's looking worse and worse for the Tories, and everything Rishi Sunak does just makes it worse. You can see the blue line going continually going down. I've said before, Rishi Sunak should introduce a UBI. That would actually perhaps turn the tide somewhat, but he wouldn't do that because it would actually mean caring about people, and the Tories don't care about people. Just sticking with Rochdale for a little bit more. I'm not going to stay with it too much tonight, but just a few more things to cover. Here was a guy who was interviewed on the street by GB News, of course, and he's not a huge fan of George Galloway.
I thought Mr. Galloway got in on the Gaza ticket. Instead of concentrating on what should be happening local with Rochdalians, with the people that live in this area, breathe it, he's got in on the Gaza ticket.
The Gaza ticket. Okay. Yeah, somewhat true that it was because the Muslim community in particular felt they felt abandoned by Labour. They're not going to vote Tory, so it makes sense to vote for George Galloway because he's actually talking about this. Brad, thanks for that super chat. And Truss's approval rating is -60, on par with Prince Andrew. The problem with Liz Truss is she'd look at that and say 60. Well, it's better than 50, isn't it? Because 60 is more than 50. I used to be in charge of the country. I appointed Kwasi Kwarteng as Chancellor.
I certainly wouldn't have voted for him.
Do you feel like, therefore, he's not got any priorities for Rochdale? Do you think he's going to be able to change this area much?
How can he change anything? He's a single MP, and his party is not in government. just think, oh my goodness, like the reporter, I'm not saying that the guy here is dumb, but the reporter doesn't understand politics. George Galloway will have zero impact on what happens in Rochdale. He's not a member of the governing party. He will not be a member of a governing party. So his influence, like, you might as well ask about a Labour MP. What's West Streeting? How much of an impact is he having in his constituency? Well, probably extremely limited, because he's not in government. He actually probably has. He's a member of a potential government, so perhaps businesses are looking at and going, maybe we should donate to this guy. But when it comes to George Galloway, he'll have no influence, no impact. He may be able to stand up and talk about talk about his favourite cake shop or something, but that's about all.
Face it, how many times has he been in now? 4 times? This is his 4th time now. I can't think of anything that he's done for anybody else. So what the hell is he going to do for Rochdale? I'd love to ask him that question.
And do you feel like it's maybe because people felt like they couldn't trust Labour that someone like Galloway's got in? Do you think that's a problem here, that people can't trust Labour?
Once again, does this GB News reporter not understand what actually happened? It wasn't that people didn't trust Labour. It's because Labour told people to stay away. Labour's vote completely collapsed because the Labour candidate was, in a sense, removed. Once again, why are you asking questions when you don't actually know? Did this guy just return from a holiday abroad or something and was like, here, you have to go up to Rochdale and interview people. Interview them about what? About the by-election. What by-election?
Well, it's like everything. I mean, the Conservatives have finished 3rd, which has, amazed me. Because I don't think the country can trust the Conservatives at all. But I think the Labour Party will get over this, I've never voted Labour in my life. I'll admit that now, and I don't mind it. But I just think, we shouldn't be talking about Gaza. I understand what's happening in Gaza. I don't like it any more than most people do here. But I think we should be talking about Rochdale and what's happening in Rochdale. How we've been let down for the last 3 decades, as I can see, as I've been here. In the town centre, it really needs an uplift.
Okay, so this guy has said that he didn't vote Labour, he would never vote Labour. So who was he voting for? Like, I presume he was voting for the Conservatives, because unless he doesn't sound like a Liberal Democrat voter. No offence, but he sounds more like a Tory voter. So why are you complaining about Rochdale being let down if you continue to vote for the Conservatives? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. You're saying the town has gone to shit, basically, but I'd never vote Labour. Okay, but you understand that if you vote Tory and the Tories get in, I'm not saying in regards to Rochdale, because it doesn't really make that much difference, but if you're backing the Tories and the Tories are the ones in power and they're not helping Rochdale, then what's the point in having the Tories in power? Anyway, Dean, thank you so much for that super chat. I think UK has been buying nukes from North Korea because the UK the UK test missile, it fell in the water. Yes, there was a missile. Allegedly, Grant Sharp said it shouldn't. The problem was dampness. Unfortunately, just don't use submarine nukes or submarine missiles underwater, because it tends to get a bit damp underwater. That was the problem. So as long as you use yours, maybe a little bit of a breeze, then they'll be perfectly fine. Yes. Allegedly, I think it was produced in France. But this is also another problem. This is a strategic problem. Why are other countries producing such important weapons, be them defensive weapons, for the UK? Shouldn't they be... Like, the UK produces weapons, so why the hell was a submarine using foreign weapons? Like, strategic weapons like this. I don't understand. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks. Sorry, I said Dean. Did I say Dylan? Thank you so much, Dylan. Love the name, Dylan. for those who may know. Damp water. Wolfpet, you know. Grant Shapps was put in charge. Remember, Grant Shapps was talking about he didn't know that there were submarines, or didn't know that he didn't. What was it he did? He said something really stupid about the Air Force. I don't remember. Missile had black mold. My goodness, it'd been left in a council flat for too long, probably in Rochdale, maybe. Anyway, let's move on from that. Different story. Sticking with the Tories somewhat. The Tories are robbers, thieves. They steal other people's policies. Non-dom tax breaks for rich people may be scrapped by Jeremy Hunt. So there he is, looking very happy with himself. Jeremy Hunt is considering ending or reducing non-dom tax breaks that allow wealthy individuals to live in the UK while their wealth is considered as residing overseas. So this is something that Rishi Sunak's own wife was benefiting from. So it seems, I don't know if it's covered here, but the cost, let me see, because no, it's not. The cost to register as a non-dom is like 30 grand or 50 grand or something like that. And Rishi Sunak's wife obviously was registered as a non-dom, so she ended up paying almost nothing in tax. But if she couldn't have registered as a non-dom, she would have to pay something like £100 million in tax. So, you know, spend 30 grand and avoid millions. That was the benefit of non-dom status. How can people justify it? I don't know. But it seems that Rishi Sunak and his government are deciding we better get rid of it because it sounds like a vote winner. We're so desperate for people to vote for us, we're going to try and steal other parties' policies because they're popular. So Sky News understands the measure is on a list of potential revenue-raising measures being assessed ahead of next week's budget and could be enacted to give the Chancellor more room to cut universal taxes. So the Tories, I think we're looking more and more, it's looking more and more likely that we'll see a general election this May. There are pros and cons. A May election would probably help the Tories somewhat, but I imagine many Tory MPs who know that they're going to lose their seat would be dead set against a May election because they'd be hoping, no, let's have it in 2025 because I need to, I have a mortgage to pay, I have bills to pay, and if I lose my seat now, well, I'll have to face the cost of living crisis and be like ordinary people. David McGuinness, thanks so much for that super chat. I'm a spokesperson for the SNP. We hold no malice to England or the English people. We don't like the Westminster system. There you have it from the horse's mouth. And guys, check out the Sunday roast this Sunday. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but we have two wonderful Scots debating a number of issues with my wonderful co-host, Alex, Political Axe. So do check out the Sunday roast this Sunday. Thanks so much, David. Yes, and thanks for that that explainer there. Yes, the SNP don't have a problem with the English. They have a problem with Westminster, and Westminster is deeply dysfunctional. And we saw it actually a couple of weeks ago, where the SNP had a motion on the war in Gaza, on a ceasefire, and it sort of went tits up, to put it mildly. It's also personally sensitive for the Prime Minister, whose wife, Ashaka Murthy, daughter of the billionaire founder of the Indian software giant Infosys, previously benefited from non-dom status. What does non-dom mean? Non-dom is short for non-domiciled individual and refers specifically to the tax status of a person who is in the UK, who is a UK resident but whose permanent home is abroad. Non-doms only have to pay tax on money earned in the UK. So if for example, if you are a very rich individual married to a politician, you would be a UK resident, but your home would be registered abroad. So you would pay tax in that country, but you would not pay tax in the United Kingdom. So for example, if the tax rate on, for example, capital gains or something like that is much lower abroad, then you would be you would have your permanent home there. And this is what a lot of the very rich people do. The very richest in society, for example, they go to places like the Cayman Islands, register there, buy a home there, a flat even. It doesn't have to be something that you need to live in. And I'm not an expert, obviously, but from what I've seen, you go to a place where the tax rate is much lower, and then you can say, well, I get paid, my money is all in this other place. I'm just living in the UK, and you just pay tax on what you earn in the UK, which could be like a few buttons. So it's a pittance, I should say. So you end up paying very little tax in the UK. You end up paying very little tax in the higher tax rated country, and of course you pay less tax in the lower rated taxed country. This allows wealthy individuals to make significant and entirely legal tax saving if they choose to be domiciled for tax purposes in the lower tax jurisdiction. Labour has long supported ditching non-dom status and has proposed cutting the duration of benefits to just 4 years in a concession to what they generally call UK temporary residents. Why? I don't know. You just get rid of it altogether. There's no justification for it. What is the justification for non-dom status? It's a tax loophole. It's tax evasion. Tax avoidance. Anyway, so Jeremy Hunt seems he's willing to take it on board because he believes it would help him reduce taxation in other ways. Now, this is a really bad idea because about cutting taxes. No, getting rid of non-dom is a good idea, but cutting taxes, he should be increasing taxes because public services are on their knees. The NHS is on its knees. He needs to increase taxation, especially for the richest in society, because the country is in a dire state. £400 million to Rwanda. How's he going to get that back? So let's move on. Michael Gove, under investigation by Standards Watchdog. The probe into the Levelling Up Secretary relates to his register of financial interests. So the Tories have been in power for so long, some people perhaps decided, well, I should make a bit of money on the side while I'm here, or use my position to make money out of it, because an MP's salary clearly isn't enough to live on. so I need to top it up. It relates to the Housing Secretary's register of financial interests, but is not known what specifically is being investigated. Further details remain confidential until the inquiry is concluded, and those under investigation are barred from discussing the allegations. Although the cause of the investigation has not been published, last week The Guardian reported Mr. Gove did not register VIP hospitality he enjoyed at a football match with a Tory donor whose firm he recommended for personal protection equipment PPE contracts worth millions of pounds during the COVID-19 pandemic. So there we have it. Okay, how many times do I have to say this? In the past, if you wanted to make a huge amount of money with very little investment, what you do is you go down to your local bank and you say, I'd like to take out a loan for about £5,000 or between £5,000 and £15,000. The bank manager would ask, why do you want this money? And you say, I want to invest in my local Tory MP. They would say, well, how is this? How are you going to pay for this money? How are you going to return the money to the bank? How are you going to pay off this debt? And you say, well, I will likely be handed a contract for PPE or some other type of contract worth millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of pounds. The bank manager nods in agreement, hands you a check for whatever money you asked for, or transfers it to your bank account, and then off you go and you make a donation to the Conservative Party. And of course you refer to the politician and then you wait about 2 weeks. Now it may be necessary in the meanwhile to set up a company in company's house, but it's generally just the case that you'll have to wait about 2 weeks, and then you should receive a contract worth hundreds of millions of pounds at the most, or maybe just a few million pounds. And then you close the company because you don't have any because it's you declare bankruptcy or whatever, and then you obviously don't have to do anything after that. You just enjoy the money for the rest of your life. Max knows how to make cash fast. So this is likely what happened in the Michael Gove case. Somebody made a donation to him. Now, if you can also, if you get a contract worth hundreds of millions of pounds or millions of pounds, it's only proper that you provide the Tory MP who helped you with that, with not just a donation, but also with some courtesy. If it'd be a very nice gesture to offer them, tickets to the FA Cup final or to a Formula One racing event or something like that. A dinner at a Michelin star restaurant, something like that, just to show your gratitude. And also, it's good to keep a good relationship with this MP, because you may need them again in the future, or they may need you in the future. So it's good to have this, maintain this type of networking. This is how these things work. This is how politics works, guys. We tend to think it's about voting on a policy or voting a political party or an MP into a position of power. No, that's for the ordinary people. The real politics is when you make donations to political parties, and when the donations are pretty big, you can actually get access to the politician. We saw it with Boris Johnson, a former minister of a former Vladimir Putin minister of his government. His wife paid £150,000, I believe, to Boris Johnson to play tennis with him. Who the hell would pay £150,000 to play tennis with Boris Johnson? Like, I wouldn't pay £150,000 to play tennis with Boris Becker. But for some reason, somebody decided it'd be a good idea to pay Boris Johnson £150,000 to play tennis with him. And it just happens to be the wife of one of Putin's ministers, former minister, I believe. But, if you're never a former minister of Vladimir Putin if you're still alive. Okay. Anyway, this is just how things work, unfortunately. Moving on to another story here. I want to move on to this story first. What's happening in the US? We'll just jump across the pond a little bit first.
It's the potent political issue of 2024, and these the people in the crosshairs.
Oops.
Migrants stuck for the moment in no man's land at the wall which separates Mexico and the United States. With border crossings at record highs, the president knows it's a serious vulnerability for his re-election campaign. And for his likely contender, a major opportunity, both men making dueling visits to the southern border.
Beautiful day, but a very dangerous border. We're going to take care of it. Thank you.
Our country back.
And this is where Donald Trump's rhetoric is reverberating.
Nothing is more important to voters in the entirety of the U.S. because we've basically made our country into a sanctuary country.
My God. This again. Like, don't these people know that most so-called illegal immigration is where people overstay their visas? It's not people crossing the border, crossing the southern border. There are people crossing the southern border, and they need to be housed. They need to be provided accommodation. But what seems to be happening is the Texans and the Republican-run states are busing people into Democratic states and dumping them there. And then they have to pick up the slack, and they have to try and resolve this problem. So you have Republicans deliberately making the situation worse. And then I believe Joe Biden tried to have a bipartisan agreement with the Republicans to deal with this, to deal with the people crossing the border. And the Republicans voted against it because they know that this is an issue they can weaponize. Trump owes $350 million in legal fees. He could raise that in a week by leaving the European. Well said, Brad. There you go. See? Problem solved. Maybe Farage can give him advice.
This group of veterans in San Diego are driving in convoy to the border wall.
Well said, Archangel. Overstaying your visa doesn't provide the dramatic video, though, with the music and the guns.
Eric is a former Marine turned estate agent.
It just takes one. It takes one to cause, another 9/11 or an October 7th in Israel.
So we're talking about Mexicans, people from South America crossing the... Like, does he not understand who... Okay, never mind.
My wife travels with 4 kids. She doesn't have the training that I do. That goes around and is aware all the time. She just doesn't.
Why do these people always think that everyone is out to get them? Really, I don't understand this sort of attitude. Is it a Republican attitude? Is it people in the border area, like in Texas? Is it they're living in this constant fear that somebody's going to try and kill my family? That I'm at any moment you need to be ready to pull out your gun. You have to have it in your holster. You have to have an automatic. You have to have if the automatic jams, you need to have a revolver. If the revolver jams, you need to have a pump action shotgun. You have to have all of these things on you at all times. Maybe a few grenades just in case, in order to save your family from being killed by, a Mexican family who are trying to just cross the border and improve their lives. Andrew, thanks so much for that super chat. Trump has a bond to pay. He's paying to escape. He's trying to escape. Is he trying to escape? He has a bond to pay. Is he? If he doesn't pay the bond, he'll lose all of his assets. Now, allegedly, somebody told me that he owns a social media outlet. Was it Truth something? The irony of that. Truth Social or something. So if he actually sold his shares, he would have a few billion, so he'd actually be able to cover it. But he hasn't done that yet, which is interesting. Thanks, Andrew. Just looking back at the other one about the... Brad, thanks so much for that other super chat. Sorry, I missed it. If I had a coke dealer, I wouldn't declare them. that's Michael Gove, yes. Well said.
So yeah, it definitely worries me.
Donald Trump talks about immigrants poisoning the blood.
Can I just ask, I know it's not really a question that comes up, but what is the ecological damage of having a frigging wall like this? Like, aren't there native animals like trying to migrate during the summer or during the autumn or winter, whenever they migrate, and they can't cross this tract of land because there's a fucking wall there? Do they care? Well, of course they don't care about that. Like, I don't know.
Of America. What do you make of that sort of language?
Illegal immigrants. I don't want here people that are gonna come over and just suck the system dry.
Where the wall ends.
What did I was going to say Boris Johnson? What did Donald Trump do? He was giving out contracts to his mates. He was sucking the country dry. He was trying to do deals with countries around the world where he'd get access to real estate. And then what was he doing? He was giving away state secrets. Like, is that not... Like, and these people are worried about maybe a Mexican family coming in. Project Fear at the US-Mexican border, big time, Max. It seems to be the case. And it seems that Joe Biden, if he's not tougher than Trump is, then he's going to lose these crazy people.
The group have laid razor wire in a bid to thwart what they say is an illegal invasion.
We tried to make it painful enough upon arrival that they would just find another way.
For those who do make it through, this is what their first few hours in the US looks like. Waiting on a pavement in central San Diego is Maria from Ecuador. She says she's fleeing gang violence.
The situation in Ecuador, it's ugly, it's dangerous. We came over here for a better future, to support our family and to stay for a while.
Immigration.
And what are they going to do? They're going to work. Like, they're not people living off the state. They're people who want to work, to improve their lives. Like, why would you have a problem with that? Like, I understand if a huge number of people come at one time, and there's no housing available for them. But the Republicans are not dealing with that. What they're doing is they're just shipping people around other parts of the country. Trump had 4 years when he was president, and then Biden is doing the same. The wall is a political football beneficial to both parties.
Isn't just a flashpoint in border cities. These migrants are heading to the airport and destinations across the US. Laurie and Tom from Denver, Colorado say the system in their city can't cope.
We can only handle so many people. We only have the resources for so many, and to allow people just to keep coming in and coming again, something's going to break.
You think Donald Trump would protect the border better than the Biden administration currently is?
I think anybody would protect the border better than the Biden administration, regardless of who that is,
Okay, but what do you want them to... Like, what would Donald Trump do? People keep saying Joe Biden's not doing it, so Donald Trump will do it. Do what? Like, what do you want Trump to actually do? They keep saying build the wall. But if people can get in other ways. But what do you want him actually to do? What is he suggesting he's going to do? Well, we're going to put tanks on the border. We're going to put army on the border. Do you know how long the border actually is? And wherever you put tanks or soldiers or whatever, people will find other ways. This is just, as was pointed out in the chat, it's a political football. It's a tool being used. If you don't help the countries, Reagan is correct. If you don't help the countries where they came from, then you'll never reduce the numbers. And not mention climate change. No, if you mention climate change to the Republicans, they will say, well, we don't believe in it. So these people are coming for other reasons, nothing to do with climate change and nothing to do with their societies collapsing. Like, why aren't we helping them out? If we actually invested in... And the big problem, of course, since the 1980s is how the US government, including the CIA, have been undermining democracy in Central and South America. So, this is sort of... How's it? Chickens coming home to roost. Anyway, guys, I want to move on to another story here. Back in Britain... Rough sleeping in England soars by 27% as charities slam truly shameful figures. Quarterly figures from the government also show over 78,460 households are facing homelessness. Nearly 4,000 people are believed to have been sleeping rough in England on a single night last autumn, a 27% increase from the year before. This is something that could be resolved. When it came to the pandemic, this was resolved to a certain extent during the pandemic because people were not allowed to stay on the streets. So accommodation was found for them. But when the pandemic ended, in a sense, people were just forced back onto the streets again. Government figures now also show a record 109,000 households were in temporary accommodation from July to September 2023, including more than 142,000 children. This is the future we're talking about. 142,000 children in temporary accommodation. How are they supposed to build a life out of that? We've seen so many videos online about this before. How so many young people moving from town to town because their temporary accommodation ends. They have to up sticks and move to another town, rebuild their lives from scratch, and it's really disrupting. It disrupts their lives, their social life with their friends, and it makes it more difficult for them to get their feet in, to continue their education in a sense. It's always more difficult because they have to start from scratch. They have to start in a new school and all of this. It's effing disgusting. If Trump comes back as US president, he will try to remove 2-term limit. Yes, he'll try and do an Erdogan. He looks at people like Erdogan, he looks at people like Putin and says, wow, I want to be like that. The only reason Trump lost in 2020 was because of the pandemic, because of the people were tired of him messing about. And they realized, look, we have to get rid of this guy. And while it seems, and I've been very careful with what I say here, but it seems that Trump may not get in. But, with the border wall and stuff like this could convince enough people to back Trump and he could win in these swing states. Once again, in the report that we saw, people in places like Colorado, which are normally Democratic states, if they start to see the issue of immigration as a problem because the Republicans are just sending everyone up there, for example, they could be convinced to switch to the Republicans because they think, well, at least the Republicans will do something about it, or well, they claim to do something about it. Remember, the incumbent, it's difficult for the incumbent to say, no, vote for me, I will do something. People expect you to do something now. Homelessness should not be occurring to this extent in this modern time, especially with so many empty vacant properties. Yes, there are. So one of the things as well, and this is a very valid point brought up there by Arsenal, there are so many empty properties because of the pandemic, because businesses downsized, more and more people working from home. There's vast amounts of empty office space that could be converted at least into temporary accommodation for the time being, so that people can be moved in and off the streets. Some facilities can be presented, some facilities can be created for people who are, with maybe mental health issues, drug problems, alcohol problems, that people develop on the street. They could be moved into this type of accommodation. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, but it's better than being on the street. And they would have access to something, certain resources, certain facilities that they wouldn't have, and they have to rely on charities at the moment with. So yes, this could be a great opportunity to move so many people off the street, and I hope Labour will do this. The Tories don't really care. It's not, people who care about homelessness are not going to vote Tory, and then the homeless don't have the ability to vote. They don't have the right to vote. They don't have the access to this right, this privilege. So it's so the Tories don't give a crap about them. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to cover, went a little bit over time, but I want to cover one final story because George Galloway ate up most of our time. But
welcome to Iran.
So what's happening in Gaza at the moment is over 100 dead as Israel opens fire on Gazans scrambling for food, say Palestinians.
Country with a pivotal role in a region in turmoil. In Gaza, health ministry numbers show the death toll has now passed 30,000 people. And growing desperation has led to even more tragedy near Gaza City. Palestinian health officials say Israeli troops opened fire on a crowd waiting for food aid, killing 112 people and injuring 760 others. It happened.
My God. So initially Israel said, no, we didn't open fire at all. And now, well, no, first of all, they denied any involvement at all. Then they said, no, it's actually Hamas that attacked. And now I'm not sure what the excuse is.
Happened at around 4 a.m. local time as a convoy of aid trucks moved north along Al-Rashid Street, passing through an Israeli checkpoint near Nabulsi roundabout. Israeli officials acknowledged their troops opened fire, but say many people were trampled on or run over after storming the aid trucks. Hamas is warning that it could jeopardize the ceasefire talks going on in Qatar. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilson, reports from Jerusalem.
Desperate scenes at Kamal Edwan Hospital in Jabalia as dozens of injured people were brought in after a crowd rushed aid trucks in the early hours of this morning and were reportedly shot by Israeli soldiers.
What happened was that yesterday we received information that aid would be dropped in the Nabulsi roundabout area. All the people from the northern Gaza Strip were there with us, heading to the same place. Then, at 5 to 4, we were surprised by Israeli tanks that came out and opened fire on people randomly and directly. Immediately afterward, all we found were martyrs, the injured and the wounded scattered on the ground in a chaotic and horrifying manner.
The dead and injured were transported by donkey cart and stretcher along the beach road where the truck convoy had been moving. It seems more likely that they were victims of small arms than tank rounds, probably fired from a nearby Israel Defense Forces checkpoint. The IDF has a different version of events. They've released edited drone footage that they say shows people climbing.
Edited? Why is it edited and not released the raw footage?
Of events. They've released edited drone footage that they say shows people climbing over the trucks and claim that the motionless people on the ground died in a stampede or by being run over.
So okay, let me get this straight. So people were being run over by these trucks. People were climbing on board these trucks. So the response the IDF had was, well, we need to shoot these people. Okay.
They say later, in a separate incident, their soldiers shot people who refused to turn back when warned not to approach a checkpoint. This contradicts eyewitness reports. Some of the injured were taken to Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Their testimony and that of other eyewitnesses is similar to those at Kamal Edwan Hospital.
We ran towards the food aid to get some. The soldiers and tanks fired at us. The people in the front and the back were shot, some in the hand, others in the legs. We left the food aid and ran.
An injured man at Al-Shifa Hospital says they were shot at twice.
After they stopped shooting, we went back to get our aid. By the time I got flour and some canned goods and took it down from the truck, they shot at us. They shot me, and the truck driver left and ran over my leg.
My God, just complete chaos. And like, why are you shooting at people? Like, once again, if it was the case that people were getting too close to the checkpoint, then don't you shoot into the air? Don't you shout with megaphones, tell people to go away, or put up a barrier? You know, surely they have this equipment available, or bring out military vehicles to block the road. Like, how can the first reaction? Oh well, people are getting close to the checkpoint. I'm telling people to go away. Well, my first response is to shoot. Like, what sort of training do these people have, if they got any training at all? So this is, once again, this is a situation that's not going to be improving anytime soon. Will Netanyahu ever end up in The Hague on trial? Probably not. He more likely end up in an Israeli jail because of what's been happening. The Israeli people want him in jail, so he needs to drag out this conflict as long as possible because it keeps him out of prison, it seems. The IDF are Hamas recruiting sergeant. If someone treated anyone like this with nothing to lose, why wouldn't they want to repay their treatment? So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thanks to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks so much for the super chats. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job, and thanks to everyone who smashed the like button. I want to say thanks to sorry, I'm reading the chat and then I get confused. Sorry. Thank to everyone who came on and smashed the like button. Remember to check out the Sunday roast this Sunday. I won't be there, but we have some wonderful guests about Scotland and what happened recently in the House of Commons. They're going to cover that. Before we finish, we have our one for the road. Hope you enjoy this before we go. Oh, we have Alexis. Thanks so much for that super chat. The state of Israel is carrying out Nova Shoah. It's really concerning about what's happening, and it seems that there's no the international community. I said this before. What needs to happen on the Israeli side is the Western nations need to put pressure on Israel to agree to a ceasefire, and the Arab nations like Qatar need to put pressure on Hamas to respect a ceasefire on that side. And if both sides come together and we apply significant pressure, both sides, then perhaps we can have some sort of ceasefire at least, and then the rebuilding of Gaza can begin. And of course, it would require support from the international community and the United Nations, I believe. So thanks so much for that super chat at the end. Let's finish on a high note with this final one for the road.
Welcome to Broken News. And election news now, as the competition hots up in the race to become Rupert Murdoch's new assistant and bitch bag. Reports say the turkey-necked, bollock-headed businessman and evil overlord is currently taking meetings with potential candidates, but is undecided on who will run the political arm of his business empire here in the UK, and be his personal weak-willed cuck-slave cum-dump. Our reporter has more.
Yes, millions are set to go to the polls as the UK's election machinery swings into action later this year. The appointment of a new assistant for HRH Rupert Murdoch to work out of his Downing Street office is hotly contested and is known colloquially as a general election. It's all up for grabs, as you say. The sentient tumour and tyrant-loving destroyer of lives says he's yet to decide who to choose as his new underling and scrotal massager. Although we understand he's keen for someone a bit like Tony Blair, but without the charisma or firmly held convictions. But there is some confusion in the UK over what members of the public are voting for. In a survey, Broken News found that many Britons mistakenly think that the electoral system democratically decides the new leader of the country. Fucking idiots. Well, Mr. Murdoch has also been keen to set the record straight, and in a statement to Broken News, the depilated and dilapidated dictator defender said,
"You fucking idiots, just fucking shut the fuck up, yeah? I'll fucking decide who does what. I'll tell them what to fucking do and when to fucking do it, and they better fucking do it or I'll fucking fuck them with my fucking media empire of fuckery."
Back to you.
Fanny, thank you. What a lovely story. Good luck to everyone involved. You'll need it. You'll really need it. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
Wonderful. One of the best, I think, so far. So, guys, have a great weekend. What am I saying? Have a great weekend. I'll see you. I won't see you on Sunday because it's I'm not attending the Sunday roast this weekend, unfortunately, but I will see you on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. Take care and good night. Oh, Andrew, thank you so much for that super chat at the end. Don't forget to join Reagan Elite. Yes, do become a subscriber of Reagan Elite. Wonderful YouTube channel. Do check it out do check out his channel, become a subscriber, and give him a like as well. So guys, have a great weekend. See you soon. Take care, and as always, good night.